All right, we're back. It is COMP2007, and it's week 3 of the summer 2016 semester, part 1 of our broadcasts. We're going to talk about a couple things today with ASP.NET. One of the things I got to ask is, so who started assignment 1? Anybody? Oh, a couple people started. Wow. Oh, compared to first class, I got lots more response. How much did you start? Did you actually do anything? So, yeah, I know you did. Right? A little bit. Remember, assignment 1, for those people who don't forget or forgot, that it's due next week, Wednesday at midnight, right? So if you haven't started yet, that's very bad. Please start. I highly recommend that you do that. Okay, time's a ticket. Today we have a couple things to handle. One of them is we're going to talk about user controls, and if we can get to it, validation again. We're going to refresh ourselves with validation. We talked really briefly about it week 1, and we're going to try and talk about it today. Hopefully things will go a little smoother than last day. A couple of things to note upcoming, all right? So remember that assignment 1 is due Wednesday at midnight. You've got a lab 2 that I've put up on a Blackboard right now that's due tomorrow at midnight. We're going to talk about that lab 2 stuff today. And I highly recommend when you kick off today's lesson that you make a lab 2 as we're talking, so you can submit it by the end of class or by tomorrow, or like early tomorrow if you can't do it today. All right, the other notable point is next week we're starting off with data, and we're going to be using a SQL server, right? So I highly recommend to you that you set up a SQL server up on Azure. Right now, anyone still has problems with Azure? Please put your hand up. Oh, no one in this class. So everyone's good. Everyone's golden with Azure, right? Not. I know some people are still having trouble. What you need to do, and for next class, it's kind of a take-home little assignment, is put together a little SQL database, right, on Azure. Now, I've created one called COMP2007, right? So you can't do that one. But if you look at SQL databases here, right, if you click here, it shows you that I have one. Right? You can add one, certainly. But the way I want you to do it is go to New, right? And you're going to go to Data and Storage, and you're going to click on SQL Database. Right? Now, I'm recording this for you so you can go and do this later. I don't want you to do it now because we don't have time. You hit a database name, right? Whatever database name you're going to use for this course. I called mine COMP2007. You can call yours whatever you like. Make sure you choose DreamSpark. SQL servers traditionally eat your account. So please don't leave the SQL server running. And if it's on pay-as-you-go, like if I chose instead of DreamSpark somehow pay-as-you-go, which is another option for me, it would kill my credits, and I wouldn't be able to use. I actually, either way, it's going to cost you like 20 bucks a month. SQL servers are expensive, right? So please, whatever you do, make it with DreamSpark. That's number 1. Okay. Resource group, I've made one called Georgian College. And all it is you can choose one like Canada East or Georgian College, something that makes sense for you. I want to make a blank database. I don't care for a sample or a backup. I don't care for those things. That's what I would do. And then from your configuration piece, right? Notice again, I only have one created. You can make your own configuration. You're going to make the name of the database, your server login. You want to choose a name that you don't want to forget, like your name would be good, right? But the really important one is your password. Don't forget your password. Once you make your password and it's wrong, make sure it's not North Europe. That doesn't make any sense. You want to just definitely choose something that makes sense for you, which would be like Canada East or someplace like that, right? But your password, you want to make sure you remember when you create this resource. Really, in a nutshell, that's the first piece that I want you to do. I want you to do it for next week because I don't want to putter around creating databases next week, for the whole class. Like this can end up being a long process to do it right. And you may have to do it more than once. Here's what actually the database would look like. So if I was to go to my dashboard and look at my database, this is the completed version, right? Notice that I'm using database with the version of V12, right? This is okay. So far, you see that there's regular settings here. One of the challenges we're going to have is the firewall for your database for next week. And if you click on the actual server name, again, this is being recorded, so you can always go back to this. You can see that it pulls up a second set of settings. So not the first set that you saw there, but the second set has firewall, right? In firewall, my database has an address that I use, right, with a start IP and an end IP that's the same. What you want to do is you want to create a rule name that says everyone, right? And your start IP is 0.0.0.0.2.255.255.255.0. What does that do? It opens up the subnet and makes your database really insecure, right? So you wouldn't want to do this in real life, right? You want to do this for our little database example here. Now, here's the problem we're going to have. Even if we do this, here at the school, we like to block database access for whatever reason. So you can try and make this work at home. It might work, right? Connect to it, all the connections. And then, but here you come into the class and not going to happen, right? Why? Because school's blocking. So we might have some errors next week that says, I can't connect to my database, whatever. But you connected just like, the night before at home, right? It's okay, right? But the challenge is the school stuff. And we have to work, Rich and I have to work to try and get that blocked. He knows somebody at IT that we can help us unblock the ports for our particular room, because there's a set of IP addresses. It's definitely not 192.139.153.37 I'm getting right now. That's my local IP address for getting Wi-Fi, right? That's inaccurate. That's like, if you ever set up a Wi-Fi anything before, if you've never set a Wi-Fi access point, you're going to get a 192 address. That's a local IP address that's served, from the local server, the intranet address, right? I don't want my local internal IP. I want my external IP, but the school isn't going to give me that, right? So the school IP, it's the one that hits the Microsoft Azure site, and those are the ones we have to kind of vet, and it's going to be different depending on which room you're in. If we have, a bunch of IP addresses for the college, okay? So it's one of the things we need to do. Please, for next week, set up a database. We can change the firewall settings later, but I don't want to do this work next week. I want you to do it at home as a take-home project. I'm going to still step you through it next week anyway, just for people who just don't listen to what I'm asking you to do right now, right? Because some people still will not do what I'm asking you to do, and they won't create it, and I'll step through very quickly, right? But I won't take my time to explain the stuff that I'm talking about now because I'm doing it already, right? So please get it done. Also, don't add any additional users. You don't need to do that. The only user that's going to access your database is the admin for now, but we're going to start data next week, and we really need this to work, so please set it up. Okay, so that's upcoming. Another thing that we also want to look at, not with Azure necessarily, but with the stuff that we're producing, is next week on Thursday, we're going to give you your project. Your first project, project 1, which is a pair programming project. Okay, so it's going to be with you and somebody else. It's made to be for 2 people. It's not made for you to be doing it alone, right? But I'm pretty sure somebody's going to want to do it on their own. And but I'll tell you right now, you're not going to have any less criteria, right? Your criteria are going to be the exact same, right? So here's what I don't want you to do. Please don't pick a dog to work with. Okay, I'm going to put it up on the video so you guys hear me again. Don't pick someone who's not going to work, all right? Pick someone who you know is at the same level as you, who wants to work, all right, and who agrees to work with you. I will not accept any more than 1 person as your partner. So please don't ask me can I add this person as my partner? My last name is, forgive me. My last name is Patel, and I have another Patel I want to work with, and I want to have a couple more. No, only 1 person. So you can choose 2 Patels at a time. Okay? How about that? And I say that in a very funny way, but the reality is, we have partners, teams we want to work with. One of the major themes in business is always keep a good team together, right? So if you work with someone before and it works well, stay with that team because it worked out last time. And it saves you things like team integration, leadership, all that kind of stuff that you had before. You already have the way of interfacing with another team member, right? So why would you want to go and recreate that or add another random element into your team? You don't want to. And if you worked with someone before, work with them again. All right, so remember that next week, that's what's going to happen. It's going to be broken up just like we did last semester. For people with me last semester, we broke it up into 3 parts. So even though you're going to get a big 20% project, the first part's with 5%, it's going to be your planning piece, and the second 2 parts are going to be your deployment pieces that you're going to have to kind of put out. And I'll specify all that in the details of the project next week, right? So there's different piece parts. I recommend pair programming, which is not you sitting with someone in different rooms on different computers. I recommend, try this out, one person type, the other person sits next to them, and they work. You put your brain together to try and figure out the solution, right? Why? For most, there's some sense of research that's been going on with modern coding houses that they do that, and they save things like errors, right? A lot of prevention, error prevention. A lot of times it helps in production, right? They can code faster because a lot of times if one person doesn't know something, the other person's got it up. Yes, you can use more than one computer. You can certainly do that. Someone can Google a solution while the other person inputs, but only one person is working on the project at a time, right? I'm going to encourage that for next week, not because I don't want GitHub and all that. I think GitHub collaboration, everything is great, but I want you to create your project next week, and we're going to talk about a different way. Maybe we'll set up something called an organization in one of your GitHub accounts, right? And we'll talk about that. So your team will be your GitHub account will reflect your team name, okay? So again, there's going to be pair programming for this project, right? And then after the project's done, as we move towards the end of the first half of the semester, we'll get there's going to be a little bit of an exam with a bit of practical and a bit of multiple choice. Looks like you guys are pretty good with what I've seen so far. Lab 1 is done. Lab 2 is up online, right? So you can see it. Again, it's due tomorrow at midnight. So I'm encouraging you to start off, even though you don't have to. You can always watch. Some people like to watch and then do it after. The reason why I produce my videos is because sometimes it's difficult for me to type and look at what the professor's doing. When I'm a student, whenever I'm learning something, right, I hate this. I hate doing this, right? Kind of typing away and then looking at the professor's screen, typing away. I'm never fast enough, no matter how fast I am, right? So can you imagine that? I can imagine how you feel. That's why I produce videos, right? They're not for replacement. They're there for you to use as reference material. So you can go back and go, okay, I don't want to hear Tom's chatter, this or that. Let's just go to the real parts, this part that I need right here. So please use it for that. That's what it's for, okay? Questions around Lab 2, which is due tomorrow, Assignment 1, due next week, Wednesday. Your little home project, homework, which is setting up your SQL server for next week. We need to have this working, or the worst case scenario is you have to run it with local DB, which is like a local database that you're going to use on your machine, but it won't run properly in Azure, which is going to be a problem, right? So I wanted to be able to kind of, when you set up your database, it runs with Azure, it's online, everything is online, so your database talks to your web application, and it's perfect. Okay? Any questions around this? Okay. Also next week, just be reminded that this week's lab week, next week is quiz week. So next week, please come in on time. I need you to be right on time. That means I'm going to start right away. 10 minutes in, the quiz will close, right? So if you're not in the first part of class, your time for the quiz is over, all right? Please don't ask me to do the quiz another time or whatever. Unless it's an emergency and you had a real family emergency or some kind of sickness or whatever, it's your responsibility to be here on time. Okay, so just letting you know, what we're going to be talking about is the things we're going to be talking about today in class. That's what's on the quiz, as well as some stuff from last week. We talked about master pages last week, right? Those kind of things. We also talked about what else? What else other than master pages? A little bit of Bootstrap integration. We talked about all that kind of stuff last week. All the things we talked about last week and the things we're going to speak about this week, they're fair game for the quiz, right? PowerPoints, if I've talked to the points, right? If I've talked to the PowerPoint slide, it's okay. If I haven't talked about it, but it's there, I may, ask you some questions that are generic, but I'm not going to hit you on something that I haven't specifically talked about in class, not on the quiz, okay? All right, so that's next week. For now, what I want you to do to get us going, because this is a we do together class, right? Is we're going to set up a new file, new project to get us ready, right? Now, we're going to go to web. Underneath web, there are several templates. The templates, for me, have been updated, by the way. If you click on ASP.NET Web Application, .NET Framework, there was a patch that came out recently for Visual Studio 2015. If you see an update notification, please do not update your Visual Studio 2015 in class, okay? Please do not download and install Update 2 in class, all right? It will not happen properly. You will not be able to work properly. Do those updates and patches at home, okay? That's when they should be done, not here in class. Okay, ASP.NET Web Application .NET Framework. Remember, I'm using Visual Studio 2015 with Update 2, and mine's the enterprise version, all right? We'll talk about that. I'm going to make a new application. Please do not click on Application Insights. That would be very bad, right? Let's set up a new application. Let's say COMP2007 and summer 2016, and it's going to be lesson 3B because you guys are the B class, right? All right, let's press. Now, again, something I mentioned earlier in this morning session is, do I really need to create a directory for a solution? I got an email like that. The answer is, if I don't, it doesn't create an outer directory. It doesn't solve or create other problems, and just let you know, it doesn't create an outer directory. So you don't have to do it. I'm creating the outer directory because it's a directory for the solution. If I wanted to add more than one project, which in the future I will be doing, right, then this is a valid start, right, because I want to maybe add some test projects, right, other projects. You can have more than one project in your solution. For now, we only have one, but in the future, we'll have more, so leave this checked. Leave create new Git repository checked. Press OK. Make sure this is unchecked. All right, now we're here. Notice that the rest of my templates are missing because we did a bit of an upgrade, like I told you, right? The patch fixed some stuff, changed the template, and they split things out into another template altogether, right? So it's not like they had like one, all the templates were combined together now, and now they're separated, right? So that if you notice before, I cancel for a second, and I go back out to here, notice that I have more than one template. One that's .NET Core, and the other one is .NET Framework with Core Web, right? That's the new version of ASP.NET, right? And it used to be inside of our ASP.NET Web Application .NET Framework, the old way, right? Now it's not there anymore. So we only have these ones, which is good for us. I want you to click on empty. I don't want you to click on anything here. No unit tests, no MVC, no web API, no web forms, scaffold. Definitely do not click this. If you click this, it'll cause a different thing to happen we don't want, right? So don't click this. Press OK. All right, so this is the second time we're doing this, but we're doing it for a specific reason. All right, so remember, we're talking about something called user controls, right? Last week and the week before, we talked about server controls, which are built-in controls into Visual Studio. It is ASP.NET web forms. Okay, so today it's going to be slightly different. Okay, so there's my application. Immediately, what I want to do here is I want to create a site master, a master page. Now remember, there's two kinds of masters we typically use. Sometimes we call them a front-end master, right, for front-end pages. And we might have an admin master for administrative dashboard type pages. We could do that too. For us right now, we're just going to make an HTML. Do we have it download? We'll right-click here on our application. We're going to say on the project side, we're going to click Add, and we're going to click on, now if you've done a master page before, you can see that there's a web forms master page down here in the favorites, right, or quick add section. We can also go to new item, which is where I want you to go today, and I want to look at web forms, right, web forms. So if you notice, like web form with master page is not cool, you want to look at master page. Here we go, master page, what I really meant. Here we go. And there's this one, web forms master page, which is what I want you to add. I want you to call this one site, just like last time. All right. Now, I don't want to do this every single time. This is something that we do time and again. We've been doing it. And it's like, I got to make a whole new application every time. So after today, what I want to do is use a template. I'm going to create a template for us. And we're going to base our next lesson, lesson 4, right, as an example, on a template that we create today, right? So it's one of the outputs of today's lesson as well. Okay, we got our master page. I know in our master page, I'm going to drag and drop some controls in here, right? Drag and drop some controls. I want to make 2 pages today. If you notice, one of our requirements today in our lab 2 is I want to make a user control that defines a custom nav bar, right? And the other one is a custom jumbotron, which we're having a bit of trouble. So we'll have to go back to that. I'll come back. Use a custom of Bootstrap, right? So because I'm going to be using Bootstrap, right, Bootstrap 3, we need to install Bootstrap. Let's install all the NuGet packages we require for this particular template. So again, I'm going to go back to the solution level, right-click, and I'm going to add all the templates in this order, please. Right? So I'm going to go to Manage NuGet Packages for Solution. If you're using Visual Studio 2015, you'll have to click on Online. There's a section that says Online Templates, Browse Online. Here in Visual Studio 2015, just click Browse. What I want to look for, hopefully it'll come up with the most popular ones. It will. Give it time. It's empty? Something's wrong. Bootstrap should be available here in NuGet Packages, right? I also want to mention that next week we'll be using the Entity Framework add-in as well, something that we're going to add in for next week's template. We're going to make a new template for next week. But for now, we're going to do our first template, template A, if you will, or template, in your case, template B. But for now, all I want to add is Bootstrap. Please add that in. I'm going to click on my project. If you're using Visual Studio 2013, you won't have to do that. Just click Install, right? And then, and you've seen this before, it adds an old version of jQuery in here, right? Which we have to update. But we're not going to do that here yet. Notice that there's a little update in Visual Studio 2015. Don't do that yet. Okay, next. I know that I'm going to have to use, because we're going to do validation, one of the requirements is user validation today. We need to use unobtrusive validation, which is jQuery. We talked about this like day one when we were together, right? So what I want you to do is search for ASP.NET Script, right? And if you search for ASP.NET Script, right, if I start typing, the first entry is ASP.NET.ScriptManager.jQuery, which is the one I want, this one. What this does is it takes away that weird unobtrusive validation error where you try and drag and drop validation controls. I don't know if you guys remember that. And there's two ways to fix it. One, you can fix it with the web config and turn it off. And the other way, you can add this NuGet package and you're good, right? This is the way I want you to do it. NuGet package, right? Add ASP.NET thing, and then click Install. Now, when you do this, it has the effect of upgrading jQuery from 1.9.1 to 2.2.3. So you're good. You don't have to upgrade jQuery. So there's less clicks. Right? Trying to make it more efficient for you guys. All right, it's going to go do that. It's going to finish. And then what I want to do, yes? ASP.NET.ScriptManager.jQuery. Okay. Maybe I'll see you at the break. Is there now? Okay. The next one is, well, you can use Font Awesome, right? Because Font Awesome is the way to go. So please add Font Awesome for icon fonts. I'm going to choose the 4.6.3 version. That's the one I want you to download, not the other ones. Okay? There actually is other versions that are previous to this one that work too, but this one adds everything in the right places. Press Install. Okay, so that we've got all our requirements in here. All right. Now that we have our requirements, we're going to continue to build our master page, right? And what I want to do with the master page is just review some of the stuff we have. One of them is HTML lang is equal to English. This is going to make us compatible with localization for English for our website, right? General English. Also, we want to put some meta tags in there. And if you're lazy like me and you don't want to go searching around to type them out, you can always go to getbootstrap.com. Let's try this out, getbootstrap.com. And if you go to Getting Started, right, there is that starter page that has all the meta tags we want if you forget how to type them in. Again, I've explained these before, but the first one is a character set meta tag. The other one is compatibility with IE and Edge, right? And also the last one is a viewport meta tag that we use for mobile devices. So these three, grab them, copy them, and then go into your Visual Studio and paste them. There we go. So now we've got the three meta tags in here, right? Again, this is a little bit of a review of what we did last time. Under the title, we want to put in all of our CSS. So again, this is our CSS section, right? Yay. Okay. And this is where we're going to drag and drop the stuff from our content folder. So in order, we're going to put in bootstrap.min.css. Here it is. And then after that, we're going to put in our theme, bootstrap-theme.min.css. Put that in. And then finally, our fontawesome.min.css to get our fonts, our font awesome going. Now, one thing we're missing is our custom CSS of our own. You can call it custom CSS. You can call it app.css, styles.css, main.css, whatever you feel is appropriate for your website. I'm going to call mine app.css. So I'm going to right-click here on the content folder, I'm going to click Add Style Sheet, and then we're going to add in app.css. It's going to be empty, so I'm going to take away my body selector, query selector, and I'm going to put in some comments that says something like, you know, custom CSS styles go here. There we go. And once I've done that, I'm going to drag and drop my app.css underneath my font awesome, right? Why this order? Because app.css should always come, or your custom CSS should come last because of cascade, or the cascade order. Remember that the last rule takes precedence, right? So if I was to put my app.css before my Bootstrap, Bootstrap includes normalized.css, which would kill my styles. Not good, right? Please put your app.css at the bottom. There's a particular order for this, right? Also, same thing with font awesome. You want to put your font awesome underneath Bootstrap. All right, so we've got this piece done. Our content placeholder for the head, that's named correctly, but our poor content placeholder for the body or my main content is incorrect. You don't leave it as content placeholder 1. Change it to something like main content. That makes sense, right? Underneath my form and before my body, this is where we're going to put our JavaScript to enable our page, front-end stuff on our page, JavaScript. So front-end web technologies go here. The first one would be under the scripts folder, your scripts. I want to drag and drop our jQuery.min.js. We need this to enable Bootstrap. And I will drag and drop Bootstrap underneath that. Those two JavaScript libraries are important to put in there. As well, you know, you may want to make your own JavaScript library. Now here, chances are we won't be using JavaScript locally for us because we're using C#. But just in case we want to do any kind of front-end changes with JavaScript, we can. Sometimes we can solve a problem with that. You can also use TypeScript. If you're a TypeScript person, you like TypeScript, you can do that. But again, combining JavaScript or TypeScript with C#, I often find myself when I'm doing an ASP.NET web application never using JavaScript because I don't need to. I can do everything with C#, which is way powerful. Well, it's a very powerful language, right? So let's put a JavaScript file in here. You all right? And put in we're going to call this app.js, and we're going to do the same kind of comment at the top. We're going to say something like, you know, custom JavaScript. It's here. There we go. And that's what this is. So we got our app.js. We're going to drag and drop our app.js underneath my bootstrap.min.js. So we have that in order too. So we've got everything we need here for our pages. And this is grand. It's fantastic, right? We've got our site master and everything else. We still don't have a page to work with. For now, what I want to do is I want to create my 2 content pages, right? I need to satisfy my requirements for my lab 2. I need 2 content pages, a master page and, sorry, a default page and a contact page. So let's make those. So I'm going to go to up here. I'm going to do it the easy way this time, right? So I'm going to right-click on here. I'm going to go Add. And now if you've done it before, you're going to see Web Forms master page, right? Web Forms with master page is what I want, right? But let's do it through the new item again. If you haven't done this before, you go New Item. And I want to go, if I type in Web Form, right? It'll say Web Form with master page. This is the one I want. Click that one. And down here, change the name to default. This is our default page. And choose Site Master as the Site Master page. There we go. I want to take away this piece. I'm not going to change the head, that's for sure. In my title, I'm going to call this thing Home Page. We did this before, last week. Take away the extra space. I don't need that there. For now, what I want to put in is a little bit of body copy in here, like this, div with a class of container, right? That's just activate Bootstrap. Inside my div tag, I'm going to have an h1 tag with something like, you know, welcome, right? That's what's going to be in there. And then press tab after that. And if you've got Visual Studio Web Essentials, this will activate. If you don't have Visual Studio Web Essentials, it won't work, right? Doesn't work for you? No, I don't. That's what I love it. And then it's very similar. It uses Visual Studio Web Essentials, use Zen coding, which is very similar to Emmet, which we've talked about before in COMP2007, and in other courses, which is a shortcut to do your HTML as opposed to doing it by hand. Okay, So we've done this piece. Let's add our contact page, right? So we're gonna do the same thing, except we'll do a little faster. Right click, we're gonna add, and inside of our quick add, we're gonna go into our web forms with master page. We're gonna call this contact, and this time we'll do the same thing. And in the title, we're gonna make this contact. There we go. And we're gonna just kill this first piece up here, right? We don't care about this stuff very much. And inside our body copy, we know we're going to have a couple of different changes here, right? So a little bit more of an expansive entry here. So we'll say div. Remember that we're using Bootstrap, and Bootstrap uses rows and columns, right? So we're going to say container is the outer piece of our form, right? And inside there, we're going to have a div with a class of row. Inside that, we're going to have a div with a class of column medium offset, right? 3, we did this last time, and column medium 6, which is going to give us our spacing, right? 3 columns to the left. That's what it's going to do for us. It's going to add 3 columns of margin to the left, 6 columns of content, and then 3 columns of additional content or space to the right to center our code for our form in the middle, right? And then inside there, we're going to continue. We're going to have an H1 tag that's going to say something like, you know, contact us. I can do this all in one line here, and when I press tab, it does it all, right? That's what it's supposed to do. So, I mean, nothing that we haven't seen before, but the idea here is that it saves us time, right? So that's what this page is going to have. So we have 2 pages right now, right? In our site master. Before we upload everything to GitHub, let us test the pages. That's the proper way to do it, right? So let's just run this thing in Chrome. It's going to run our IIS server. The build succeeds, and if everything goes well, we'll see welcome here somewhere in the middle. There it is. And just to check to see if Bootstrap is enabled, because that looks like something's wrong. Let's take a look, right? So if I go to my body tag, you can see that inside I've got some other stuff going on. Here's my div, my feedly, and here's my form. I'm gonna look at this. And inside my div tag, here it is. And I have a container, class of container. This is good. And then I have welcome. All right, so this is all the stuff that's happening right away. Okay, cool. Now I can't get to my contact page because I don't have any navigation yet, but I could do something like this, contact.aspx. And if I go there, then contact us, you can see is over here. So there's a bit of more margin on the left-hand side because that's what I've called for. So everything is working right now. We have no nav bar, but this is what we want. This is a great place to create a new Git repository and start this off. Now remember, we talked about, if I go to GitHub and I go to Georgian here, I want to create a new repository. Now, this morning's class was lesson 3A. You guys, excuse me, are lesson 3B. Summer 2016. And then it's lesson 3B. That's what we're going to make, right? Lesson 3B. So I've got my repository, which gives me a URI, right? Here's my URI. Remember, doing this kind of stuff, I'm going to make an Azure site as well. Why? Because in a test or on an assignment, this is usually worth like 8 points just to do these 2 things, right? You know, so you might as well do it. By the way, I'm going to talk about some other stuff in a second. So here's my link, right? I'm going to go back to Azure, to Visual Studio. I need to go to Team Explorer now, and inside Team Explorer for Visual Studio 2013 or 2015, I got to go to Changes. Notice in 2015, I have all these changes I got to add to my staging area. That's a new thing that they added in 2015. 2013 just actually to make a commit. But here I got to press this plus button to stage all, and then I got to do a commit. I'm going to call this commit initial commit. Now there's another commit that Microsoft made in the background, but we're going to ignore it and just continue with ours. Initial commit, and click commit staged. There we go. So we're committed. We made this one commit. I want to sync it now. I'm going to click home, and I'm going to click on Visual Studio 2013 unsync commits. On 2015, just click sync. And then you don't want to choose these 2 options for now for 2015. You just want to choose the bottom one, which is this one. On 2013, you're just going to see this yellow field. Right-click and paste, and then publish. And if you've got Visual Studio 2013, 2015 configured correctly, it'll push everything to GitHub without asking you for your username and password. If you're doing it for the first time, hopefully not, because you've done lab 1, right? Then it'll work. You worked. Oh, you're golden, right? Okay, good. So we've made it work. We've connected to GitHub. All right, good. This is part 1. This is for, that was 2 points I got because I made a GitHub connection, right? I only have 1 commit, so I don't get all my points yet. If I do multiple commits and work with this, then yes, I get all my 4 points, right? But I got 2 points so far on an exam or a test, right? All right, I need to do something else. I need to go here and set off my Azure container, my web container. Now remember, if I go plus, now again, or you can see it like this typically, like, you know, you might see Azure like this, yes?
Can I delete my other Azure containers?
You should be able to use as many as you want. Sure, as long as I've marked it, so yeah.
All right.
Okay, so otherwise you're gonna go to web and mobile, right? And what you want to do is make a new container here under web app. I'm gonna make one for us. It's gonna be COMP2007, summer 2016, lesson 3B, because that's what you guys are. And then someone took it. You bad people, right? Someone took it. All right, that's okay. We'll make it 3BX, just to choose something else, right? 3BX, right? Anyways, don't take that. And then you have to choose a resource group. I've made one that I'm going to use called Canada East. You can use one as well. Notice that my app service is in Canada, not in East Asia. And I'm gonna kind of pin to dashboard here and click create. It's going to take its time to go through and do its thing. And when the deployment dance is done, right, you'll see this pop over and you'll see a bunch. I'm going to start erasing some of these older ones. Eventually I will, just to unclutter these things or just take them away from our dashboard. But it doesn't cost you anything to make free little web apps for testing, which is what we're doing, okay? So once the deployment's done, am I done? If I handed this in like this, am I okay? My Azure? Hey, listen, if you give me this blue screen of death over here, like this, right, that says, hi, your Azure site's been created, right? You're going to get 0, right? I'm not going to give you points for this. This is not working. This is blue screen of death for me. The other white screen of death is, hi, you don't have access to any resources on the site, right? You're not authorized. If I get one of those 2 screens, I'm going to consider that you get 0 for your Azure, all right? Not because you haven't done your work, but you haven't finished it. So please finish your Azure. Can't look like this, okay? How do I connect it? Remember that in Azure, you're going to go down to deployment source under publishing. This is just settings, right? Deployment source. And under the right, you're going to see choose source. Now, you certainly could choose Bitbucket if you didn't want to use GitHub, if you're a Bitbucket person. You could also choose other things. Please don't choose the other ones. One of these is okay if you like Bitbucket over GitHub. There's still a Git service, right? But I'm going to choose GitHub. And then I'm going to choose, I have a organization. I'm going to choose Georgian, obviously, as my organization today. And then for my project, it's the last project. The last project you've made on GitHub is going to show up at the top, right? And then I'm going to click on OK. No other thing. No performance testing. No different master. No different branches. Nothing. Just that. And press OK. When I've done that, it's going to go up and says, even though it says successfully set up deployment source, please wait until you get the check mark to be sure, right, before you hand it in. Otherwise, you're going to get an ugly 0 for your blue screen of death that you're going to give me, right? That goes back to, like, I don't even know why Microsoft chose that color. That is like, it's not meant for them, right? They've had too many blue screens of death, like Windows 95. I remember going back to that, right? Blue screen of death. Now they're giving it to us again with Azure, right? Maybe they did it on purpose. I don't know. But for me, it's like, when I first saw that, I was like, no, not a blue screen of death again. Okay, so we'll wait till this thing cycles, and when it's done, we're going to check it, right? Because even though this is check mark, we don't know if it's going to work. Let's click on this anyway, because we might get the white screen of death, which is like, you have no authorization to view my site. That's another one. This is good. Welcome. hey, notice there's a difference here. Notice how my welcome is really fat, right? But locally it's like thin. Why is that, right? You gotta think about why that is. You should think about why that is in a second. If I also test it with my contact page online, contact.aspx, you can see that it also goes to contact us, which is also fat, right? But not so locally, right? Why not? Because remember, Microsoft is rebuilding your project online with this version of Bootstrap, right? It's gonna be slightly different than the one you see down on your pages. Just FYI, yeah.
What are the reasons that permission still happens? Like, what can I do to resolve that?
You resolve it. The reason why it happens is because the way you've set up your GitHub container. So see how I just did it? That's the way you do it. If you do it any other way, if you stray from my formula here, right?
Can I see your GitHub before you go?
Yeah, sure. You can see my. It looks like this, right? You see that I have my git ignore, my git attributes, and the solution file out here, and then inside you have this piece, right? If you have anything else, like a README file or anything else under that, it will fail.
I have a .ds, like a visual
Something's not right, right? And so it's looking at that and going, I don't know what this is that you're giving me. Fail, right? So please don't put that in there, or I don't know how you get that. Anyways, so that's what you need. Now, this could also be avoided by unclicking the create directory to house my project in a solution, right? That would also solve the problem, because then your solution wouldn't have an external directory, and it would just have the front files, you know, your default files and everything on the root. That's okay too, right? Which might be a solution if you have a problem like that. Yeah. Right? So if you want to, just take away, uncheck that, you know, create directory for a solution, because we're only making one project anyway, and that'll solve your problem.
I have it in a, I have it at 30 months. Mine is
An extra file. All right, we'll look at that after. Maybe we can fix that. I don't know. But typically the problem is that with Microsoft, if you're going to make your own project, I don't know if you've seen this before, if you bury your index.html inside here, or default, whatever, won't run. I'm surprised this is even running. But Microsoft somehow talks, or supposed to talk to Microsoft, and that's why it's working this. Okay, so we got to this point. We've got our GitHub stuff going on, right? Everything is golden, right, at this point. And we've deployed to Microsoft Azure. Let's go back to this piece. We talked about user controls. And one thing I'd like to point out is that all the stuff that we're going to be talking about today, for the most part, is up in the PowerPoint on Blackboard. Okay, so what are user controls? I want you to think about them as how I think about them as, custom HTML tags that you're going to make, like custom directives, like the ones from Angular, right? I want you to think of it that way, and not that, but just think of it like that. It makes it easy to consume a little better, right? What you're really doing is you're making custom HTML tags, and they're going to represent, wherever you put those tags, whatever your custom control is will be injected into that location, right? Now this has a great, it's a great opportunity for you to reuse your stuff over and over again, as opposed to typing it all by hand every time. Like a navbar, which is what the first one we're going to make. We're going to make our navbar control first. Let's do this. All right, so navbar. First of all, I need to know how to add. I'm just going to close these down temporarily for now. Okay, I'm going to go into my Solution Explorer. All right, I'm going to add our new user control, and I'm going to do this by doing the following. Right-click on my project, add, and then I'm going to go to New Item. Okay, under New Item, you're going to look at or search for User Control or User. Notice that there is a Web Forms user control that comes up, right? So what I'm actually doing here is a template. Notice also that my ending is not ASPX, it's ASCX, which means it's a programming type file, all right? Not a page file. So my web user control, I'm going to call it navbar, right? That makes sense. Navbar.ascx, and press add. It's going to take your user control and plop it right into the root of your folder. Here's my root of my folder, and here's my ASCX user control. That's what it is right here. Notice that it also has a code behind file. That means that every user control has its own input into the application development lifecycle, which is my runtime lifecycle will be something like my page load event. I can do that. It has its own entry into the page load event, which gives me a lot of control. So if I drag and drop stuff from my toolbox, right, I don't have control of the buttons, of the page load event that happens when the button loads, right? But I can make it so that when my user control loads, I can have access to the code behind file right away, which gives me additional control. Okay. So what I want to do here is, first thing we do is we define our user control. I want to do a nav bar. Now remember, I use code snippets, right? Code snippets from Bootstrap, the Bootstrap code snippet pack, right? But there's a new code snippet pack that I recommend for you that you download for C# as well. Might as well tell you this now before I continue. Tools. And I want to go to extensions and updates. Now you got to do this when you're at home. Please don't do this now, right? But what you want to look for is an extension and update on online. You can click online here, and you're going to click for one that's called, if I go to code snippet, right? Code Snippet Studio. But what I want to talk about is, I think it's called Snippet Essentials. There it is, Snippet Essentials, Snippet Essentials. There it is. If I look at Snippet Essentials, it'll come up with this, Snippet Essentials, right? Now this comes with 700 new snippets for C#, which is awesome. That means if you type like something like C, like letter C, and then tap, it'll give you a class, right? Like one of those kind of things, which is going to be super useful for us coming forward when we do things like with web ASP.NET MVC in the second half of the semester. But remember, what we also have, which I want to remind you of, is this Bootstrap snippet pack, right? So Bootstrap, if you don't have this already, I mentioned this before, but it's really super helpful to get this one, because then I can, instead of me going to Bootstrap, right, or getbootstrap.com, I can do something like this, bs-navbar, right, and then press tab, right? Or if you forget how to do that, you don't know the shortcut for your code snippet, you could always go on any snippet, by the way, right-click, insert snippet, right, and then choose Bootstrap, choose what you want, like for example, navbar, right? So navigation bar, here it is, the top. And then when you do that, it tells you the shortcut right here, BS navbar, right? Okay, that's one way. The other way is, if you're really lazy, or if you can't get Bootstrap snippet pack, because for whatever reason, sometimes people can't get it, or they don't want to install it, or whatever, you can always go to Bootstrap and get it from there, right? So I can always go to Bootstrap, right? And you can see that I want to get my navbar, so you can always go to Components on Bootstrap, right? This is exactly the one you're getting. Click on navbar, scroll down, and then this is what the navbar I want is going to look like, right? Here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to add in these left links, or the drop-down menu, or the search bar, or the submit button. So you're going to see I'm going to get rid of some of this. That's why we're making our custom control, because I don't want to do this all the time. I want to do it one time, we have it, and then I can drag and drop as many nav bars as I want, right? And they're my nav bars, not some of the stuff that's added in here. I definitely want this link, but I don't want this drop-down, right? So I could always copy this and modify it if I want to, if I'm really lazy, right? But I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to say bs-navbar tab, right? Now that I've done that, and if it's a butted, it's right next to my, from a counting perspective, I'm using this as counting. So when I say line 2, the first line is line 2. Underneath my @control, that's the difference there. @control directive. We've had @master directive, @page directive. Now we have @control directive, all right? And this tells us we're making a custom control. Okay, notice that I don't want, underneath here on my line 16, I want to get rid of the UL all the way down to line 37. I want to copy those things all the way with the first UL and the first form I want to get rid of. Just press delete. Okay, I want you to do that. And the reason for that is because we don't need that stuff. We don't need that stuff there. So, okay, then inside the second UL, I want to get rid of the second list item. I don't need a drop down, so we're going to get rid of the drop down. Now, you can use it if you want, if you have a drop down requirement, but I don't. Okay, my list item is right here. My link. This is my navbar, right? Okay, let's make it so. Remember, this is we're going to use this custom control on our master page, and it's going to be replicated across all of our pages. So therefore, we want to make this as nice as possible. All right, we know that I'm going to make use of my brand. I'm going to call this thing ASP.NET. You can call it whatever you like, and especially for this is We'll talk about that. Some people have been asking me, what do I need for assignment number 1 if I've never done a portfolio site before? Some people haven't had a chance to do that. We'll talk about that in a second. The other thing is I want my href tag to point to my default .aspx site. So when I click on my brand, it goes back to my site as a way to get back to the beginning. All right? I want to inject, right, an icon from the font awesome icon pack. So I'm going to just add a few spaces now and go I for icon. It used to be italics, but we don't use this for italics anymore, right? Dot, and then it's font awesome is the class, FA dash, and we're going to use like that little castle that comes with font awesome called Fort Awesome, right? Dot FA dash LG for large. So a large version of the Fort Awesome icon. And then press tab. So it's going to give you this class, this icon right here. I'm going to cut it, put it next to here, right? Just going to close this off for a second so you guys can see everything. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this ASP.NET from here. So now I like just add give you a bit of a space, one space before ASP.NET, and then kind of shuffle it around all the way up here and delete it. Right? So it's going to be looking like this. So I've got my icon, space, and then my text for my ASP.NET brand. It would be, for you, it'd be an icon, a space, if you're going to use an icon, and maybe your image. I don't know if you're going to use an image for your logo, or maybe you don't even need the icon anymore. All right, well, if we've got this format, I can use the same format for my link. Right? So I'm going to copy this on front of my link here, paste it, add a space, call this home, right? And then change my Fort Awesome to a home icon. Here's my home icon. Notice if I go up to Font Awesome to check it out, because people don't know where I get this stuff. They're like, where do you get that? How do you know what your icons are going to look like? Well, if you go to Font Awesome and if you go to icons, right, you can search for any icon you want. For example, if I search for my home icon, it'll get some options here. There's a bed. There's also something else, 8 Square, which is a hotel. And here's our home icon. If I click on this thing, you can see the code for this icon, which is FA Home. That's the tag for it, the class. And here's how it looks: I class FA Home. And we also, from Font Awesome, started adding in these ARIA tags for accessibility as well, which are totally cool to use. And actually get higher rates. You get your website becomes higher ranked from an SEO perspective when you use ARIA tags. All right, so you could also simply just copy this and paste it. Now, how do I know if it's large or small? You can see there's different sizes. You can also go to examples under Font Awesome, and if you look down under Font Awesome, you can see that there's larger icons, and you can do other things with icons too. You can make them spin around, like, or rotate them, right? You can rotate your icons and do all kinds of stuff with them. You can also stack them on top of each other by using 2 of them, right? And using the on class, right? So you can stack one on top of the other, like, or a flag on top of a circle, one of those kind of things. So you can make your own little custom fonts too. Anyways, so that's where I get everything from Font Awesome. I'm going to use the ones we used last week just to keep everything the same. I'm going to go back to here and FA Home. Now notice that my href tag is hashtag, which is just default.aspx, right? And I'm going to copy this whole thing because I want another link here, right? Which is going to be my contact ASPX. That's what that is, right? My navigation. FA, instead of FA Home, this is going to be FA Phone, right? For the phone icon. This is going to say Contact Us, or Contact, right? And save. Okay, I've got my basic navigation. One thing I'd like to change, which I did in the second class, I want to change my default style up here on the top on line 2 to inverse. So it's going to be a black bar, right? Again, I highly recommend you use your Bootstrap stuff, like I said before, to get your own custom swatch styles, right? So again, if I was going to look at Bootstrap, okay, Bootswatch, there we go. If you look at Bootswatch, there's one of them you can get to, and what they do is they give you a bunch of different themes that you can use, right? So you don't have to make your stuff look like everyone else's. It'll still look bootstrappy, but it won't look like everyone else's bootstrappy, right? So you can select themes. You can also make your own themes with your custom CSS, right? File. You can change your primary colors and everything else. And there's rules, and there's a beautiful documentation on how to do that. It's not that difficult, or you can just choose one of these. Okay. So font awesome, and we've got this. Let's go back. So we've got everything we need here. Let's test it to make sure it works, right? But wait a minute, we're not going to test it. It's not going to look like anything because we need to be able to include our custom control inside of our pages. Now there's 3 ways to do this, right? We can use, putting it out there to you, we can use page level inclusion. So I can include it as a page level by using the register keyword, right? I can use site level inclusion by using the web config file and putting in some XML, which we're going to do today too, right? The other way is programmatically, right? So let's use site-wide or page level inclusion by including this inside of our default, our site master, right? So inside my site master, underneath my @master directive, I'm going to put a @register. Take a look. Here's our register directive, right? @register. And when I press space, it says, hey, what do I need? I need a source, that's for sure. If I press equals, I get pick URL or navbar.ascx. Look, it detects it, right? Because it's in the same root. We're going to move it around later on, but for now, it's here. So double click. Gives you a nice path for it, so you don't have to worry about the pathing. Next is you need to put in something called a tag name, right? The tag name is a friendly HTML tag that you're going to use for this control. Now, it's called navbar. My tag name, navbar, right? The next one is the tag prefix. A tag prefix is like ASP. When we make ASP controls, we go ASP : and then the tag name or whatever. I'm going to use something like Bootstrap 3, right? Because Bootstrap 3, it's a Bootstrap 3 control that I'm making a custom control of, and it's a navbar, right? So I can remember, for me, from my website, Bootstrap 3 navbar means it's my custom navbar, okay? You can also use your company name in there. Some people do that as well. Like, for example, if my company was called Purple Hex Studios, I would use PHS, whatever my tag name is going to be, right? All right, so that's something that we would put in there. Now that's the first step. The second step is I need to implement this, right? So we register at the top, and then where we want it, which is in here before my content placeholder, but inside my form, I want to put my navbar, right? Like we did last week. So we're going to start typing. It's going to look like this. Okay, instead of ASP, we're going to say BS3 : and then navbar. And remember, we're going to also need a run at is equal to server, right? And there it is. Now notice that it's got this little underline that says element navbar is not known element. This can occur if the compilation error happens or if you haven't compiled. That's build our website. Sometimes you do that. We build our website, build succeeded, and you have to give a chance for poor Microsoft's Visual Studio IntelliSense to, there you go, to go away, and then no problem anymore. Let's test this thing. We just included this custom control that we made right here. Look, here's the advantage, right? It's compact, right? I don't have to litter my default or my site master page with this big navbar, right? I can just exclude that and put it into another page. I can compartmentalize. I can use my navbar as a component, just like Angular or some other modern framework, okay? Let us run it here locally to test it. And when I run it locally, I'm ready to deploy it remotely, right? We're not quite ready yet. We're not quite ready yet. And we got to talk about some problems. Here it is locally. I can click contact, and it'll take us to contact and back to home. What am I missing? The controls that go here, right? I can't see my pages. Remember how we did this last time? Remember that user controls also can have a backend, a code behind file, right? So if I go back to my navbar.ascx, right, notice that underneath that, there is a navbar.ascx.cs file, double click. Here's my CS file. And how did I do it last week? I did it like this. I said, well, switch on page.title, right? Here's my page title. Depending on my page title, if I have a case of homepage, that's what I did last week. This is the solution we came up with, right? One of them, then do something. Otherwise, if the case is contact, well, then do something else, right? And how we're able to see this thing, this switch statement work, right? We say, well, whatever the page title is. So if my page title is home page, we do something. If it's contact, do something else. But remember, we also have to tag in. Right? I feel like a WWE wrestler. Tag me in, man. I have to tag in the list items so that they have some kind of hook to hook into them to control them in HTML. And my hook is going to be an ID, right? So I'm going to go ID is equal to here home, right? With, just to make this more apparent, run at. We need to use the run at is equal to server, right? So that way we can see it on the code behind file. And the same thing goes here. ID is equal to contact, and then run at. Oops. How about this? How about we do it right? And then run at is equal to server. Now remember, we had our friend John here say to me last week, "Hey Tom, we really don't have to do that. We can put that in different pages." Yes, we can. But here's an example of where we might not want to, right? So so we've got it here, and we've got home and contact. Home and contact now, because I've made them run at server, the IDs should be available on the back end here. So if I start typing something like home on my home page, I'll get IntelliSense, home dot. And if I want to do something like, attributes dot add, and then inside what I want to add is a key value pairs, which is going to be class, and then the value would be active. So I'm going to add, I'm going to insert an active class, a class of active, to any page that to this attribute, right, or an attribute of class active to elements that have an ID of home that are in my home page. Make sense, right? And I'll do the same thing for the contact, but this time instead of home.attributes.add, it will be contact. .attributes.add. Okay, cool. Let's test it, and let's run it here in Chrome, right? Same as we did last week. This is nothing new. We've seen this last week. Okay. Yay. So let's see if it works. And if it does, we should be able to see us switch between, there it is, switch between pages, right, because of that attribute. That's good. We're almost ready to upload to GitHub and Azure. One thing I'm missing is some refactoring here. This is not good. I want to take this switch statement and put it into its own method because compartmentalization. I also want to, from a readability perspective, I like my page load event to be clear as possible, right? So we're going to go to edit, we're going to go to refactor, we're going to go to extract method. And the extract method, we're going to call this something that makes sense. We're adding an active class or adding an active page or something like that. Or set active page is what we're really going to do. Set active page is what I want to call the method. By the way, most methods that are in ASP.NET are capitalized. Set active case. That's just the they use upper camel case instead of camel casing. All right, cool. This is my active method. Yes. How do I get this? Give me a second while my Visual Studio updates. Huh? Oh, don't worry about that, my friend. This is my. It's okay. It's okay. Don't listen to him. All right. Don't. Control Z. Yes. Go to refactor and go to extract method, which is the shortcut would be Control R and then M. Right? So I'll try and do that. Let's see, try Control R and then M. Oh man, what happened? How come it doesn't work? Right? Let's try that again. Control R, then M. Control R and then M. What the hell, right? It's not a command, huh? I did, I swear I did. Try it again, watch. Control R and then M. Hey, okay. Set active page, right? There we go. And that's what I've done. Okay, now we need to comment this a little bit. So we'll say something like this. Remember that comment style we talked about using UEDoc, right? You don't have to do this, and this is not the standard, but we're using this as our standard, right? And if I look at UEDoc for a second, remember our syntax for methods looks like this for commenting. I want you to use this because if you learn how to do this for this, you know how to do it for JavaScript and almost for Java and other languages as well. So let's use this. We're going to use some kind of description or at method or at return, and we're good to go. Let's try this out. So we're going to do this. So we're going to say, as a description, this method adds a CSS class of active to list items related to navigation links. To navigation links of each page. There we go. Okay, now we're going to say something like this: at method. It's going to be called set active page. The at return, I'll be okay. At return is equal to void, right? That's what it's going to be returned as. You can also do one of these, void. It's the return type, right? Also, because if I want to continue commenting, my class, this whole thing, I want to add some space, some kind of comments from myself. Who am I? I can do the same thing up here. I could say something like, well, you know, my author, I can say at author, that's me. Oh, if I can spell my name right, there we go. And then at date is May 26. And then at version, if you want to go crazy, date should be lowercase. At version is equal to 0.0.1 with what we did. We added, you know, the set active page method, right? So we did here in our version. Chances are we're not going to really do too much with this one today, but you can see that we can add as much, you know, stuff in the code behind file as if it's its own program, little program. And notice that also that it's a partial class navbar. So what we're really doing here when we're injecting this user control into our document is we're instantiating an object of type navbar. That's what we're really doing in the background, right? Which is kind of cool. All right, I think now I'm ready to upload to GitHub and test it on Azure. So how do I do that? Well, wait. I like it, navbar.ascx, but you know what? I'd like to put all of my user controls in their own folder because it's going to get messy if I have more than one user control, and I don't want my user controls on my root, right? So there's a couple ways to do this. Right-click here on my project and click Add. There's two different folders, by the way, in Visual Studio 2015. I can add a new folder or an ASP.NET folder. This gives us special folders we can add. Don't add these ones. Go to Add New Folder for now. And I did it differently this morning, but I think I want to do this. I want to say user_controls. Take on the same kind of style that ASP.NET uses for their folders. So I'm not going to use a space. I could, but it's much safer on the web to use an underscore if you use spaces, so please do that. Okay, now I want to take my navbar ASCX and drag and drop it into my user control folder, right? So I'm just going to hide a little bit from the root. Okay, but now that I've done that, I got to update my site master because my site master's source is incorrect, right? And the way to do that, of course, is to eliminate these things here, these quotations. And as I start typing the quotation again, I can get that pick URL thing. Pick URL will actually take me into the project. I can look at user controls as a folder, and then pick navbar ASCX and press OK. And what it'll do is it'll put the proper path for my navbar ASCX file, which is our user control, inside my folder. Now, we made a change. We moved our user control from outside in the root to a folder. Test before we do anything else, because I want to make sure it works before I pump it up to GitHub, right? This is a new feature I'm adding in. Every new feature, GitHub, right? This is how you're going to get your 8 marks. Right now, I only have 6 marks. 2 marks for adding things to GitHub and 4 marks for deploying to Azure, right? Yay, it works, right? It works nicely, too. All right, so that means that I can deploy to GitHub now, officially. Let's do this. So how do we do it? Stop debugging. I'm going to go to Team Explorer. I'm going to go to Home. I'm going to go to Changes. Notice that there are 7 changes for me. I'm going to click on the plus on Visual Studio 2015 or on Visual Studio 2013. Just add in and enter a commit message. For me, I'm going to say added the navbar user control. That's what I did. Commit staged, go home again under unsync commits or sync, click on push or sync, one of the two. I'll click push this time, push it out, and we're done. Guys and girls, it's a great place to take a break. When we come back, we'll do more with this stuff, right? But this is your first user control, and you can see how it's a component that we can reuse over and over again within our pages. I've just shown you on the page level. We can also do it at the site level, okay? Let's take a short break and come back. 10 to 15 minutes, guys and girls.